In the description of yesterday's video, I said that approximately 50% of the problems that we're currently seeing in regards to street violence right now come from Antifa. And I used a lot of Andy No's reporting to show how that is the case. Stuff like this. Marauding Antifa black bloc in Seattle smash up property as they march around the city.
It's a revolution.
Parking is a regressive tax!
They said, oh, where's your mask? Where's your mask? There you go.
I don't see shit! I don't know shit! I don't see shit! I don't know shit! I don't see shit! I don't know shit!
And, just like last time, a lot of the on-the-ground protesters turn out to be soy boys. Look at these three people who firebombed a government building. They really look like a force to be reckoned with, don't they? Or there's the fact that one of the guys who threw an IED at the Portland courthouse, caught on various videos and streams doing so, was actually identified because it was his grandmother who bought him the tactical vest he was wearing, which we know because she left a product review on the website she bought it from. I got this for my grandson who's a protester downtown. He uses it every night and says it does the job. Oh, what a nice granny. Your grandson's going to jail. But the other half of the conversation is Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is a separate yet related group to Antifa. They believe a lot of the same things as Antifa. They behave in a lot of the same ways as Antifa, and the only real difference is that rather than coming out of the Soviet Union in the 1930s, Black Lives Matter came out of the 2013 death of Trayvon Martin. But if we're going to talk about Black Lives Matter, we have to start with the linguistic psyops. I mentioned in yesterday's video that simply being against fascist does not make you a member of Antifa. The idea of anti-fascism is not the same thing as the organization of Antifa. It's the same thing with Black Lives Matter. Only a legitimate racist would believe that black lives don't matter, but believing that black lives do in fact matter does not make you a part of the BLM organization. And BLM is an organization, more so than Antifa was. Antifa might have been decentralized, but it was still an organization. Meanwhile, Black Lives Matter is actually quite highly organized, as we'll get into later. But it is the linguistic psyops that allows Black Lives Matter activists to browbeat everyone around them into submission. Oh, you haven't joined BLM, the organization? Well, then you don't think Black Lives Matter. Oh, you haven't joined Antifa? Oh, well then you're a fascist. It's stuff like this. But as I said before, simply naming your team the good guys does not actually make you the good guys. In fact, it's more often than not the opposite. How often has the Democratic Party actually advocated for democracy? How often has the Republican Party advocated for upholding the Republic? How much liberating does the Liberal Party do? How much conserving does the Conservative Party do? It's my opinion that having a formal name that espouses a virtue means that your group probably doesn't actually promote that virtue. This is something that even our distant ancestors understood when, in their religious text, they described the source of all evil, Lucifer, as an angel. But the linguistic psyops have been taking their toll. Wendy's virtue signaled about the whole thing even as their restaurants burned to the ground. Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben's are changing up their brands. And in this article, the parent company, Mars, said that as a global brand, we know we have a responsibility to take a stand in helping to put an end to racial bias and injustices. And really, no you don't. You just sell food, man. You didn't kill George Floyd, you didn't start the riots, you have no responsibility here. White people in visible public positions are losing their jobs to black people in the name of representation. The Chicago Sun-Times has decided to start capitalizing the B in black. New York City is renaming streets to Black Lives Matter. In Susan Wojcicki's mid-year update to the YouTube community, she promised to adjust the algorithm to amplify black voices on the platform. And absolutely none of this has anything to do with George Floyd. Nothing to do with police brutality, nothing to do with reform. It's all just token efforts by organizations that want to look good and therefore earn some more money. In fact, it's become such a profitable virtue signal that even people working for oppressive Islamic regimes are saying hashtag Black Lives Matter. Forget about the fact that they throw gay people off of buildings, stone women to death, and want to see every Jewish person dead. They said the right thing on Twitter. And you know, when people like Shoe on Head or others that I've seen online, you know, they post memes of a blind person holding a mug and saying, "Please, sir, just a crumb of reform." I get it. Because on the one hand, absolutely nothing's being done about the real issue. On the other, you still have to admit that the entirety of society is on board with this whole thing. Not to the point of actually making any positive change, but certainly to the point that anybody who criticizes it gets completely run over. For example, the phrase "all lives matter" is considered racist. However, definitionally, the phrase "Black Lives Matter" is contained within "all lives matter." since black lives are human lives. They are part of the all. But why have legitimate reform when you can just vilify somebody and then beat them in the street?
The next person who has the sheer nerve, the sheer entitled caucasity to say all lives matter, I'm gonna stab you. I'm gonna stab you. And while you're struggling and bleeding out, I'm gonna show you my paper cut and say, my cut matters too.
I know this is what Trump supporters wanted, because standing up for Black Lives Matter put me in a place online to be seen by millions of people. The job that I had worked really hard to get and meant a lot to me just called me and fired me because of everything.
This flyer was floating around in Ohio. Attention, white men, women, and children, you are the enemy. We will not stop until there are more white homicides than black. We will not stop until all white people are sent to re-education camps. We will not stop until white people pay extra taxes to support black individuals. We will not stop until black power runs all government. We will not allow any white person to date another race. We support no white-owned businesses. Hate is okay if directed at white families. Now this is obviously like a 4chan troll, right? Probably you got some people over on the poll board who whipped this up and they decided to post them around town, and then it made its way online. But I guarantee you, if you take this flyer to people in BLM or even people in Antifa, and you had an honest, open conversation with them, you could get them to agree to most of this stuff. For example, white people. At this point, you should have your black friends' Cash Apps, PayPals, and etc. memorized. Write them on Post-its and put them on your wall, refrigerators, mirrors. Include them in the chat boxes for family Zoom calls. Have your children recite them back to you. And remember, they think violence against white people during these protests are completely justified.
Where did he hit him? Did he hit him?
Yeah.
Where's he at? Oh,
Running
shit.
that way.
Oh, shit.
Aww.
Oh, god damn. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. He just knocked him the fuck out. Yeah, I'm gonna go out there and...
Oh my god.
Yeah, that's fucked up, man. He's out. What the fuck? Oh man, he just stomped on his head?
No,
they're gonna kill
another
him.
boy.
They're gonna kill him, bro.
That was the boy that was running up
They're
there
gonna
earlier.
fucking kill him. He said let's kill him. Did you hear him?
Steal him.
I wish I was there. I felt...
And the boy's still... Oh my god!
Oh shit! Oh shit! Yo, they just fucking hit his ass so hard, bro.
They're kicking on him and
Yo!
kicking on him.
They keep kicking on him. They're gonna kill him. They're gonna kill that dude.
Where the fuck's the cops at?
Where the
That poor boy's still
Yo,
going.
he's hurting himself. Yo, what the fuck?
Let's take a read through BlackLivesMatter.com. 4 years ago, what is now known as the Black Lives Matter Global Network began to organize. It started out as a chapter-based, member-led organization whose mission was to build local power and to intervene when violence was inflicted on black communities by the state and vigilantes. In the years since, we've committed to struggling together into imagining and creating a world free of anti-blackness, where every black person has the social, economic, and political power to thrive. The Black Lives Matter Global Network is as powerful as it is because of our membership, our partners, our supporters, our staff, and you. Our continued commitment to liberation for all black people means we are continuing the work of our ancestors and fighting for our collective freedom because it is our duty. Every day we recommit to healing ourselves and each other, and to co-creating alongside comrades, allies, and family a culture where each person feels seen, heard, and supported. We acknowledge, respect, and celebrate differences and commonalities. We work vigorously for freedom and justice for black people and, by extension, all people. We intentionally build and nurture a beloved community that is bonded together through a beautiful struggle that is restorative, not depleting. We are unapologetically black in our positioning. In affirming that Black Lives Matter, We need not qualify our position. To love and desire freedom and justice for ourselves is a prerequisite for wanting the same for others. We see ourselves as part of the global Black community, and we are aware of the different ways we are impacted or privileged as Black people who exist in different parts of the world. We are guided by the fact that all Black lives matter, regardless of actual or perceived sexual identity, gender expression, economic status, ability, disability, religious beliefs or disbeliefs, immigration status, or location. We make space for transgender brothers and sisters to participate and lead. We are self-reflexive and do the work required to dismantle cisgender privilege and uplift Black trans folk, especially Black trans women who continue to be disproportionately impacted by trans antagonistic violence. We build a space that affirms Black women and is free from sexism, misogyny, and environments in which men are centered. We practice empathy. We engage comrades with the intent to learn about and connect with their contexts. We make our spaces family-friendly and enable parents to fully participate with their children. We dismantle the patriarchal practice that requires mothers to work double shifts so they can mother in private even as they participate in public justice work. We disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other as extended families and villages that collectively care for one another, especially our children, to the degree that mothers, parents, and children are comfortable. We foster a queer-affirming network. When we gather, we do so with the intention of freeing ourselves from the tight grip of heteronormative thinking, or rather, the belief that all in the world are heterosexual. We cultivate an intergenerational and communal network free from ageism. We believe that all people, regardless of age, show up with the capacity to lead and learn. We embody and practice justice, liberation, and peace in our engagements with one another. Now, in reading this, it all sounds flowery and good, but there's some serious problems, isn't there? When I mentioned yesterday the concept of community in the Marxist tongue, how they basically lay claim to the community so that they can define everyone who's in the community as good, everyone who refuses their community as evil or fascist, and then use that authority not only to bully you out of public spaces, but to appropriate your property. That is exactly how they're using it here. To them, community means authority, and their long-term goal is to supplant the democratically legitimate state with their own power structure, in much the same way that any other criminal organization would. And like I said, it's very easy to list off all the things that you are for. It's very easy to define yourself as the good guys. And all of the street violence we've seen, at least to me, proves that they're not actually what they say they are. After all, some of these people believe that the riots should burn down white neighborhoods so companies don't move back there, and then, once the property value drops low enough, move a bunch of low-income Black people in there. Literally tearing things down, making things less valuable instead of building them up in the name of Blackness. Black Lives Matter and Antifa believe that they're correct in protecting Black criminals.
Who do we protect? You said Black criminals. Who do we protect? Black criminals. Who do we protect? Black criminals. When I say who do we...
No longer does Black Lives Matter denounce the violence and looting done in their name. Now, looting is reparations. In their mind, Black people are allowed to steal from others simply because they are Black. Black Lives Matter supporters have no problem with attacking a Ronald McDonald House. For those of you who don't know, Ronald McDonald House is a charity run by McDonald's where they help treat sick children.
Debris is everywhere, and businesses are still recovering from looting Monday morning. Thousands of people came into downtown in carloads, breaking windows, clashing with police, and causing widespread damage. While a lot of high-end retailers and department stores were hit, not many expected the Ronald McDonald House, a charity for families with children in the hospital, to have their doors smashed.
They were very concerned because there was a lot of activity right in front of the house. And people, making choices that could put them at risk and put our families at risk. So the staff was frightened.
Over 30 families and their sick children were inside, along with staff helplessly watching everything unfold outside.
And again, like I said what happened in the last video, Black Lives Matter has begun acting like a mafia, demanding protection money from local businesses in some of their areas. Of course, unlike the actual mafia, sometimes paying proper tribute to Black Lives Matter still won't prevent your store from being destroyed because they don't actually care. They just want to break things for fun and steal stuff just because they can. Sometimes they'll smash something up when they know there's actually no profit to be gained from it. They just want to have a bit of fun. Black Lives Matter has killed people. A body was found in a Minneapolis pawn shop that was torched during the supposed peaceful protests against the killing of George Floyd. David Dorn was killed in the streets because he tried to prevent looting. Atalia Kelly, I think a 22-year-old woman, was also murdered by protesters.
So I hope y'all know what the fuck you did. My sister is gone, and
Dave Underwood was killed by a drive-by that happened during a protest. Sequoia Turner, 8 years old, was killed after her mother, Charmaine Turner, drove through an illegal barricade that had been set up by activists around the restaurant where Rayshard Brooks was shot dead by police officers while being arrested on June 12th. Black Lives Matter, Antifa, whatever, they set up an illegal barricade to block traffic and then open fire on people who won't respect them. They kill an 8-year-old black girl. And you know what? We'll never know who did it. We'll never know which person in the black bloc did this shit. And there's no protests over her death. Nobody fucking cares. To Black Lives Matter, the organization, it would seem that not all Black Lives matter. And you know what? I'm not surprised in the slightest, because a 2015 video clip has surfaced of an interview with Black Lives Matter founder Patrisse Cullors, in which she says she's a trained Marxist.
We actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers. We are trained Marxists. We are super versed on sort of ideological theories. And I think that what we really try to do is build a movement that could be utilized by many, many Black folk.
So yeah, how much of this flyer ended up being a 4chan psyop, and how much of it ended up being reality? But because Black Lives Matter is fundamentally a Marxist street violence type organization, would you be surprised to learn that it's actually just all about the money? Yes, Black Lives Matter is simply a group of race grifters, following in the wake of the Al Sharpton types from the 90s, who would go around to various corporations, tell them how racist they are for some perceived slight, and then get a payout from them in order to prevent them from rabble-rousing. That is fundamentally what Black Lives Matter is. Meet ActBlue, the biggest political slush fund of my generation. Look at that, those numbers are going up even as I record this. This is the Black Lives Matter website again. When we click on this donate button up here, where do we go? Oh, what does it say at the top? secure.actblue.com/donate. All donations given to Black Lives Matter groups, as well as many other charities, all get funneled into ActBlue. And with all this money mixing around in one fund, it then gets given to the DNC. You know, after the Black Lives Matter organizers take their cut, after, say, the DNC speakers who speak at Black Lives Matter events take their cut, after the ActBlue people themselves take their cut, then it filters down into all the various campaigns. Do you recall about 4 months ago where the media was talking about Joe Biden running out of money for his campaign? And then suddenly there were all these Black Lives Matter events where speakers would come and people would pay to listen to them talk. Usually they were members of the DNC. And suddenly Biden's campaign has a whole bunch of money again. Where did that come from? Oh, well, maybe it's because grassroots people donate to Black Lives Matter thinking that they're helping the cause. That money goes into ActBlue. And then when Black Lives Matter organizers give them a wink and a nudge, that money goes to the DNC. And then with another wink and a nudge, that goes to the various campaign funds. So I guess technically Black Lives Matter isn't funding the DNC, but that's only because the money's being laundered through ActBlue. This is the exact kind of thing that the entire left, the sensible center left, you know, the business Dems, as well as the extreme left, the radical Marxists, they all railed against Citizens United. They all wanted to get money out of politics. They all wanted to kill the super PACs. And yet they have built the biggest one in 30 years. And every single financial supporter of Black Lives Matter is being taken along for the ride. And yes, we have to talk about the T word again, you know, terrorist. Did a convicted terrorist sit on the board of a BLM funding body? The past crimes of Susan Rosenberg re-emerged in the summer of 2020 amid a new wave of protests over racial injustice and police brutality. Well, this rating got a mixture on Snopes. Susan Rosenberg has served as a vice chair of the board of directors for 1,000 Currents, an organization that provides fundraising and fiscal sponsorship for Black Lives Matter. 1,000 Currents is part of ActBlue, by the way. She was an active member of revolutionary left-wing movements whose illegal activities included bombing U.S. government buildings and committing armed robberies. What's undetermined? In the absence of a single, universally agreed definition of terrorism, it is a matter of subjective determination as to whether the actions for which Rosenberg was convicted and imprisoned, possession of weapons and hundreds of pounds of explosives, should be described as acts of domestic terrorism. Snopes, are you fucking kidding me? She bombed U.S. government buildings, she committed armed robberies, she had hundreds of pounds of explosives, and you're not going to put true on this because of your political bias. Holy fuck. Thankfully, Black Lives Matter support has begun to wane, actually. And I wonder if it's because of this. From Black Lives Matter UK, verified. As Israel moves forward with the annexation of the West Bank, and mainstream British politics is gagged of the right to critique Zionism and Israel's settler colonial pursuits, we loudly and clearly stand beside our Palestinian comrades. Free Palestine. Oh shit, was that a little bit too spicy, guys? Maybe went a little bit too far with that one? I don't know. Okay, jokes aside, let me actually make a serious point here. Yes, it turned out that Rayshard Brooks was a piece of shit who resisted a lawful arrest. He stole a police officer's weapon, and in my opinion, use of force on him was justified. He stole a taser and fired it at an officer. And yes, I understand your objection. A taser is not necessarily a lethal weapon. Police use it on suspects all the time. But a criminal who's able to kill police, should he actually get the opportunity to do so, manage to get his hands on a taser, he can incapacitate an officer, steal his actual firearm, and then kill him. So yes, when you fight the cops and steal their weapon, using force on you is justified. And yeah, man, I've seen the new George Floyd footage. It's still heartbreaking. He was obviously overdosing while in police custody. He was obviously freaking out and fighting them. However, when they had him fully apprehended, which at some point they did, the police's responsibility shifted to making a good faith attempt to keep him alive, and they failed to do so. Not every case is as clear as Rayshard Brooks's. And not every case is as muddy as George Floyd's. Sometimes, yes, there's legitimate racism. Althea Bernstein was approached by 4 white men, doused in lighter fluid, and set on fire. Elijah McClain was arrested, began to have a panic attack, and was forcibly injected with ketamine. He had a heart attack on the way to the hospital and died a few days later. The officer's body cameras recording during the event all just happened to fall off while the arrest was taking place. And during that recording, when one officer goes back to get his camera, another officer says, "Leave your camera there." Breonna Taylor, an EMT, was killed when 3 plainclothes police officers executed a no-knock warrant on her boyfriend's house. Her boyfriend, believing that they were home intruders, because, there was no knock and they were in plain clothes, defended himself, his girlfriend, and his property by opening fire on the officers. For some of these instances, the problem actually is racism. For many others, the problem is terrible policing. And when it does come to terrible policing, the black community does not have an exclusive claim to complaints. But in most cases, in most interactions with the police, when you're being pulled over on the side of the road or something like that, an officer approaches you, if you don't want to get shot, don't resist arrest and don't fight with the cops. You will have your day in court. If it's wrongful arrest, it generally comes out. You only make it worse for yourself with your fuck the police attitude. In the last video, I mentioned an article at the very end, and then I didn't actually go into it. That was a mistake on my part, sorry. I actually ended up cutting it out because that part would fit better in this video. Antifa, as well as Black Lives Matter, in worrying so much about fascists and white supremacists, they create the environment for those things to flourish. Let's be fucking real here, guys. The past 50 years of Western civilization has been the least racist in all of human history. We all grew up being taught that racism was bad towards anybody, that we were all going to move past it and work together towards a better future. Even in the most racist parts of the United States, young people grew up watching black actors, looking up to black athletes, listening to black musicians. It was the norm. The West was actually approaching a post-racial society, for real. And now, my generation is older. We've got a little bit more institutional power. And we are, sometimes blindly, sticking our hands out in friendship to everyone around us. We're all equal. We're all people. I still believe that. And then every single race grifter group saw that olive branch and sucker punched the West in the back of the head, saying that everything about the West, all the people, all the culture, everything, was just racist. There was no moving past it, there was no post-racial, and the only thing that we could do is reflect on our sins. Instead of all of us coming together, shaking hands, and then marching off towards that bright future, Black Lives Matter chose collective revenge against the least racist group of white people in all of history. How did you think that was gonna fucking go? If there actually are white supremacists out there making a comeback, are you surprised? The type of activism that you engage in, the rhetoric, the violence, that is what creates that fertile environment for fascism to come back. These groups always say there needs to be a true conversation about race in America. That will never happen as long as Black Lives Matter is around. Because the only framework they consider to be acceptable when talking about race is white racism. And you can't explain black on black crime. You can't explain the lack of black fathers in the family. You can't explain dysfunction within black communities. You can't explain, academic underperformance, all of this stuff. You can't explain any of it solely using the lens of white racism. As long as Black Lives Matter is involved, a conversation about race will always be a monologue about race. You know, I found 2 of these videos recently. One of them is a young white kid dancing along and playing music with some black people on the street. They all have their instruments out, they're having a good time. The other is a shirtless white man and a shirtless black man. They're very obviously friends. And the white man decides to dump a bag of, charcoal on his head, while the black man decides to dump a bag of flour. And then as they both, wear white face and black face, they look at each other and laugh. This is the actual post-racial society. This is what it looks like when there's no racism, where people are friends and nobody cares what the color of your skin is, where people can joke about each other in a light-hearted manner, where banter exists, where everyone takes their lumps. That is how you end racism, not through Black Lives Matter, not through teaching all white people that they have some kind of original sin, not by making everything about race, because the honest truth is, almost nothing is about race. And, just like Antifa, the more that Black Lives Matter advocates for violence in the streets, the more that they commit that violence, the more of a danger they are to liberal democracy. Just like Antifa, Black Lives Matter, the organization, has to be stopped with force.